right, so Katina, while you get your slides pulled up, I'll just do a brief introduction. So Katina is part of the Simon Searchlight team, and I talked about Simon Searchlight um, earlier today when I presented, but quick recap, they are a much beloved resource by researchers. They both store samples of patients and store health data on those patients so that researchers can, with limited friction, be able to get patient samples and get information on phenotype of those patients, and then do research on those samples and better understand conditions. So with that, I think I'm sure you're going to go into more depth, Katina, and I'll let you take it from there.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Eric. And slides look okay?
Yep, looks great.
All right, perfect. Yes, so thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to and really informative to sit through the talks and hear updates from last year as well. So I'm happy to round this out today and talk about Simon Searchlight and what we've learned so far in the Kleefstra syndrome community in Searchlight. And Simon Searchlight has been mentioned a few times today to give some more information and refresher for those who are already familiar with us. Simon Searchlight is an international research program with the goal of accelerating science and improving lives for people with rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. We have a really wonderful team. We have scientists, medical doctors, genetic counselors, communications, and patient advocacy liaisons to really hopefully create an enriching and positive research experience for you and your families. Since, as we've heard today, there's quite an assortment of research that can be done, and we know it can be a lot. So hopefully we're creating a space that's easier to do and give some insights back as you complete it. We're also really fortunate to have this wonderful community advisory committee where we lean on great experts ranging from caregivers and parents through to people who are conducting science or connected in other ways to the rare genetic neurodevelopmental community. And they provide us great feedback on how we can improve the program as well. And so our mission is really to shed light on rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders by collecting high quality, standardized, participant reported data and building strong partnerships between researchers and families. And so we do this first by collecting detailed medical and behavioral histories along with optional blood samples. We then synthesize the information that's provided and share results back with you, all the families, in presentations like today. We also share de-identified data and samples with qualified researchers. We de-identify this to protect your privacy, and we really want as many professional eyes on the data as possible so that more people can access and analyze it and publish on it in the literature. We also like to connect researchers and participants from around the world so that we can help foster additional research opportunities that may be of interest. And ultimately, all of this is to promote better understanding of these genetic variants. And so we're fortunate as well to not live in isolation, but really we're part of this broader network under the umbrella of Simon's Foundation Autism Research Initiative, or SAFARI. This is our funding agency, and this is a nonprofit group whose mission is really to advance basic science in autism and related neurodevelopmental disorders. And then this also exists within the bigger nonprofit umbrella of the Simons Foundation, whose mission is to advance basic science and mathematics. And so Simon Searchlight, we work with our companion studies such as SPARK, which is an autism-focused cohort study. We have our other companion study, Autism BrainNet, which is a postmortem brain tissue donation program. SAFARI itself provides a large amount of research grants for outside researchers who can then also leverage Searchlight and other databases generated by SAFARI. And again, all of this is really to pull together research resources such as animal model, cell lines, phenotypic summaries for more access for researchers. And so Simon Searchlight does study a wide range of genetic conditions. We've boxed here our spotlight today, our Kleefstra communities. And we also do make an effort to enhance our participation globally through offering in multiple languages. So Simon Searchlight is available in English, German, Spanish, French, Italian, Dutch, and Portuguese. And we are making efforts currently to expand out the amount of our surveys that are translated in these languages to enhance participation in those communities. And so we've been talking a lot today about survey data. So what are we really looking for in Simon Searchlight surveys? We do focus on participant-centered, high-priority, useful data to really capture and understand the genetic condition. We try to prioritize data that can help facilitate investigation by other researchers. We prioritize longitudinal data so that we can better understand Kleefstra at younger and older ages. We prioritize collecting data in a feasible and scalable way so that we can effectively grow with our cohort as it expands in number, as well as following people through the lifespan. And in order to generate data that can be used for a number of reasons, whether it's academic research or outcome measure selection for clinical trials, we do prioritize standardized, validated surveys that are sensitive to change over time. And so this is a bit of a bulky table. I won't go line by line, but this is a snapshot of what we are currently asking families to complete. Huge, huge thank you to everyone for completing surveys through Searchlight and through all of the other research opportunities present today. It is a lot, and we do appreciate the time that you take to complete them. So just to start at the top, I do want to highlight that it's important in Simon's Searchlight that we receive your genetic laboratory report because our certified genetic counselors will review that, annotate it, update any information based on literature that's been published since the time of that report. And that genetic variant information is really important for researchers to understand exactly what variant is affecting your family. And this also really unlocks participation in the rest of the study. So without that lab report, we're not assigning surveys and we can't distribute much of the blood samples. So really important piece there for Searchlight is to get that laboratory report to us. And then once that happens, it unlocks the rest of the surveys. So again, won't go into this in too much detail, but we're covering things like medical history, seizure history, measures on sleep, and then a whole range of things related to communication, behavior and development, quality of life, et cetera. And so all of these are asked if you meet the relevant criteria once you register for the study, and then a subset are asked again on an annual basis so that we can hear updates about how things are evolving over time. I'll also say too that individuals with variants of uncertain significance, as well as likely pathogenic and pathogenic variants, can enroll in Simon Searchlight and are eligible for these surveys. And these are a few planned additions that we're working on adding to further expand our battery of information we're collecting in Simon Searchlight. So two highlights I do want to flag here for those already enrolled in Searchlight is that we do have an updated annual medical history survey. It is long and it does have a lot of questions, but the update was really to try to streamline and have one location for both baseline and annual updates. And in an effort to reduce survey burden, we've updated the survey structure to essentially help pre-fill and preview previous answers so that we're not answering the same questions over and over again each year. So this may be newly on your dashboard. Go take a look if it is, and we would be very appreciative if you were able to complete that. And then another measure that was newly online this year is the Observer Reported Communication Ability, or ORCA. You may be very familiar with this based on participation in the other studies, but this is a newer measure on communication, really focused more on caregiver knowledge and expertise and more inclusive of minimally verbal and nonverbal communicators. And if you haven't registered with Simon Searchlight, just to give you a glimpse into what it looks like when you do, this is your dashboard. This is not a real participant. This is where all the magic happens. We have our family progress bar at the top showing what the first steps are to complete. And then right in the middle there is if you have 5 minutes today, what would we love for you to get started on? So here, for example, our Jennifer Doe would be completing their annual medical history survey. And then at this bottom part here, those are the rest of the active tasks or surveys that we're asking you to complete. And then as a token of our gratitude, you are able to receive online gift cards after survey completion, and that's available in the rewards tab in the dashboard. And as another token of our gratitude, we do what we can to present data back in ways that are hopefully informative and understandable. So this is primarily done through summary snapshots. For example, this box here is the quarterly report we put out earlier this year, high-level summary of medical history data. We often have a page 2 spotlight that looks at something else like Vineland or seizure history. And then we also have these more in-depth presentations at conferences and meetings like today. I also want to flag our Research Match program. So this is the program where we're connecting other researchers directly to families. This is opt-in, not mandatory. It's more that if there are other folks who want to connect with Kleefstra families, we try to serve as a conduit to support that connection. So researchers can recruit for other research studies. And sometimes if researchers have a different survey that they want to administer that maybe Searchlight doesn't have in the system, they can help build that out in our platform. And so we've had over 3,300 Searchlight families invited to participate in research match studies. And so one more thing is that Simon Searchlight participants can donate a blood sample optionally. This is often done either at on-site conferences like we did previously with Kleefstra community, and then as well as for people in the US, we can send a blood sample kit home free of charge, and then you would make an appointment at a local Quest Labs to have the blood drawn, and then the lab mails the kit back to Simon Searchlight. This is currently only available to US participants. And this blood sample can essentially be used to uncover more about the biology of Kleefstra in many of the ways that you've already heard today. And so I've talked a lot about us collecting all of this data from you and you offering your time. And the question is, are people looking at it? And the answer is yes. So this is a quick snapshot that is actually a little outdated at this point. But we have close to 200 research teams who have accessed survey data from Simon Searchlight or our previous iteration called Simon's VIP, close to 100 research teams looking at different biospecimens. And the Kleefstra data are available within this package that is accessible by researchers. And so this has converted over to over 120 publications that are looking at this data, analyzing it, publishing it in the literature, ranging from things like deep dives into the clinical picture of a specific condition, looking across conditions, using biospecimens, quite a variety across the different conditions that we are studying in Simon Searchlight. And so to put a more specific example, I wanted to highlight one community called Jordan's Guardian Angels. These are a great group of families whose kiddos have variants in the PPP2R5D gene. This cutie pie here in the box is featured in a video that's available on YouTube, kind of highlighting in more detail the partnership between Simon Searchlight and the JGA group in accelerating science. And I just wanted to show a few quotes to give a sense of how some of these communities are working with Searchlight. So Carol and Joe of Jordan's Guardian Angels share with us that Simon Searchlight lets them focus their time and resources on helping their participants instead of spending money reinventing the wheel. They also share that collaboration is the key to moving faster. And because of Searchlight, they were able to go from 0 to 60 from day one, both with patient reported data, but also blood sample collection. And on top of building the research ready resources, they shared more about clinical insights, saying things like, now that we have better data to understand our kids' condition through Simon Searchlight, we have a clear plan and blueprint on how to help our kids fast. And because of our collaboration, we've been able to do in 6 years what normally takes decades. We have a dream team of researchers able to use our family's data and who are working hard to get us to this point. So I wanted to spotlight some of those quotes and then also share a little bit more about the metrics behind this community. So in Simon Searchlight, for example, we have 216 individuals with a variant in this gene available in the data set that researchers access on Safari Base. And because of the collaboration we've had, there have been 16 research publications with Simon Searchlight data or research match data in this PPP2R5D group. That includes 11 that look across the different genetic communities and highlight specific findings that are coming through related to PPP2R5D. It also includes 3 papers that really deep dive into the Simon Searchlight survey data on this community to clinically characterize the community, as well as 2 papers that investigated biological mechanism with Searchlight participant contributed biospecimens. And so we're super thrilled that this group has done so much work, bringing in so many different stakeholders. Like we are just one small piece. They are truly the MVPs. And they recently announced earlier this year very exciting developments in therapeutic development with a clinical trial. So we're just happy to be one part of that puzzle, and we hope to continue to forge these kinds of collaborations with many communities, Kleefstra and other communities that we work with. And so to wrap up the kind of overview of what Searchlight is, I know there was a lot of moving parts, but for researchers on the call or researchers in the Kleefstra Syndrome Network, if you're interested in requesting biospecimens and data, all of that happens at Safari Base, which is our data distribution platform. Step 1 is creating a Safari Base account, making the request on Safari Base, and then waiting a few weeks for the application to be approved. And if approved, those resources become available. And so for more information, this QR code or these URLs link you there, or just come find me because I'm always happy to chat with researchers. And so with that, I'll pivot the rest of the presentation to what we know so far in Kleefstra syndrome, in data, and in Simon Searchlight. And so this slide here is showing essentially kind of the overall metrics for our participation in Kleefstra syndrome in Simon Searchlight. It is a overall newer group in Simon Searchlight, so overall smaller numbers compared to some of the other research studies that have been discussed today, but we have had 51 families sign up online, 39 provide a genetic laboratory report. And again, another plug, I know I'm probably sound annoying, but really getting that lab report helps unlock the rest of the study. So we really appreciate getting those extra lab reports. We've had 20 families share important medical history, 20 fill out additional surveys beyond the medical history, and 19 provide the optional blood sample. And so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but this is giving essentially an overview of the spectrum of variants that we have represented in the Kleefstra community in Simon Searchlight. So this reflects 31 participants with pathogenic or likely pathogenic variants. Who are not shown are 3 individuals with variants of unknown significance and 9 inter or intragenic deletions. So this rectangle here is showing essentially the laid out protein product. And then at the different little lollipops are showing the different sites at which the variant is impacting the gene and protein. And then the text boxes are showing, which you're very familiar with, the different variant information. And so we're seeing, sites along different locations and different regions. And we're seeing predominantly frame shift and nonsense loss of function variants. We have, so Simon Searchlight, we are a global program. We have participants across 83 countries, generally across the full cohort. And this includes at least 34 participants participating in 3 countries. We are predominantly US based. And these are not exact locations. We, use little fuzzy algorithms, but basically, it's fun to see, across the whole country, where we have Kleefstra families participating in Simon Searchlight. And as I mentioned, we have 19 participants with Kleefstra who have contributed optional blood samples, and this means that whole blood DNA is now available to researchers for request, and on a very limited basis, for specific reasons, the non-renewable source material of peripheral blood mononuclear cells, or PBMCs. And so the last set of slides will be kind of a high-level look at some of the medical history and developmental behavioral data we've collected so far in Kleefstra syndrome. This will only include data from individuals with likely pathogenic and pathogenic variants, but we do make all of the data from individuals with VUS variants available to researchers as well. I do caveat this to say preliminary because, as I mentioned, our Kleefstra community is still growing. So we have a smaller number of people to report on, but as we grow and as we collect more data, we'll be able to provide deeper insights moving forward. And so we have 14 individuals with Kleefstra syndrome with likely path or path variants who have contributed medical history data. This is from a range of people from a range of 2 years through to 30 years of age, most people under the age of 18, and we have 10 female and 4 male participants represented in this summary. And so many of the next graphs are going to look like this. So just to orient you to how to interpret them, at the very top is summarizing, what specifically we're looking at, like what body system or what topic. So here we're looking at developmental and behavioral conditions. And then the graph itself will have this vertical line where each row is, or each bar rather, is highlighting a specific diagnosis or issue or concern that's affected the individual with Kleefstra at some point in life, and they're reporting that to us through the medical history form. So for example here, and sorry, I should say that the longer the bar, that means more people are reporting having that. So if we dive right into here, looking at developmental and behavioral conditions, these two long bars in the middle, we're seeing everyone reporting experiencing some language delay or impairment, as well as intellectual disability or developmental delay. So that 100%, and then the 14 is showing 14 out of 14 individuals that that have given us medical history data. We have fewer people, 8 out of 14, who are reporting a diagnosis of autism, followed by 4 people reporting a diagnosis of anxiety, and then fewer people reporting things like ADHD and obsessive compulsive disorder. If we then take a look at kind of an overview of medical issues, sort of top to bottom, body systems, the graph here is oriented a little bit differently, where body systems that are less affected overall in the data that we have, at least from the Kleefstra community, are at the top of the bar, at the top of the graph, and then the sections at the bottom are more commonly affected based on the data we have. So, we're seeing some issues like genital kidney autoimmune that's predominantly chronic fatigue, but overall less impacted in the data we have. We start to see a little bit of an increase when thinking about seizures, immunodeficiency concerns. Again, a little bit of a higher increase as we move down the graph in joint problems, primarily hypermobile joints, as well as endocrinologic concerns. We're seeing obesity more commonly reported, and I'll dive into a few of these on the next few slides, but this is just kind of an overview. If we move a little bit further down the graph in the pink bar, we're seeing orthopedic conditions coming through. We see more commonly reports of scoliosis in our data, some heart concerns, and then we're seeing higher numbers related to gastrointestinal concerns. This is predominantly constipation and GERD being reported, and then most commonly vision-related issues and neurological concerns. And so, as I mentioned, I'll go into a few of those body systems in more detail here. So looking at the neurological conditions being reported to us, everyone from whom we have data is reporting low muscle tone or hypotonia. A couple of people reporting coordination problems and movement issues, and then some reports of microcephaly or small head size. And this text box here is just showing some more details of the specific movement issues that have been reported to us in the past. If we move into seizures, we had 4 of the 14 people, so about 30% from the Kleefstra community who reported having seizures. We separately also have a more detailed survey called the Seizure History Survey to make this a little more confusing. But this text box here is showing that 5 people actually reported seizures to us through this survey mechanism. Probably they just may not have completed the medical history survey. And from there, we were able to learn that seizure onset was starting somewhere between 3 months through 13 years of age, with our average age of onset being about 5.5 years based on the small sample of data we had. Um, we have people continuing to take medication for seizures, and a couple of people who are reporting some level of seizure control or remission. Our medication metric might be an underestimate because not everyone fills out the medication section, but we do have at least a few people who are reporting to us more details about medication use for seizures. If I go back to the body systems graphs and we look at the visual system, we're seeing a mixture of different vision issues reported. Yellow bar in the center popping out more visibly, 6 out of 14 people reporting farsightedness. If we drop down, we see astigmatism in the dark blue, and then a couple of reports of other things like crossed eyes, depth perception, repetitive eye movements, and then a few other vision issues not captured in our main survey that are summarized here in the text box. If we move to the endocrinologic system, again, we're seeing about 30% of people reporting obesity in the medical history survey, and then a couple of other endocrinologic conditions here, hirsutism, irregular menses, hypothyroidism, and failure to thrive. If we move into the orthopedic section, a couple of things popping up here. We had four, again, about 30% of people reporting scoliosis. We had one report of bracing to address scoliosis as well as surgery for scoliosis repair. And then we also have a couple of reports of pronated feet and pectus excavatum. And then if we move into the heart system, a couple of people reporting heart-related issues, a bit of a mixture. We're seeing ventricular septal defect, pulmonic stenosis, high heart rate, and congenital heart diagnoses. And then, as I mentioned, we do collect quite a bit of information on medication use. This is a bit surface level, this graph, because for anyone who's taken our medical history survey, you'll know we'll ask things like, what medication are you taking? Is it current or did it stop? Was it effective? Why were you taking it? How effective? Were there side effects? Things like that. But this graph here is just summarizing counts of who's taking medications for what different kinds of concerns. So if we see right at the top here, sleep has been mentioned quite a bit throughout today. So we're seeing nearly half of individuals from whom we have medication data reporting taking meds for sleep. Right underneath there, also taking meds associated more with severe behavior and mood challenges, but this also includes medications that are often used sometimes to help with issues related to sleep. If we then move down a little bit more, we're seeing 33% of people reporting meds to help with GI issues, 25% with meds related to ADHD. Again, about a third in that light blue bar taking antidepressants, which could be used for mood, anxiety, OCD, behavior, and then a couple of other medication uses listed here. We did also ask our small proportion of individuals that experience seizures whether or not there was a medication that seemed to work best for seizures, but no single medication stood out as most effective. And then I'll also show some growth charts from our Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scales Vineland 3 data for Kleefstra syndrome. This is another big survey that we ask for, and we know it's a tough one and it's a long one. And then we ask again a year later. So we really do appreciate the time that you do take to complete it, because it really does give us good insight into how development is looking over time. And so you've seen different Vineland plots throughout today. So this might not require too much orientation, but just as an extra reminder, what we're looking at here is a growth chart where we can essentially take on that bottom line, the actual age of the person at the time that the Vineland was completed. We then look at the skills that were shared with us and compare that to skills that are often observed in a more typical development and try to evaluate the sort of associated age in that development that we expect to see those skills. So for here, for example, we're looking at expressive language development. The dots are each individual people, so one dot and one time point per person. Uh, and the dots are placed at the level at which the individual is expressing themselves. So what we're seeing here is that most individuals, based on the 10 individuals that have given us Vineland data, are using some language at age 4 and older. There is variability in how much language is being used, as you can see with the different distribution of blue dots along the up and down axis. If we look at personal care skills, similarly, I should have mentioned as well, the yellow dashed lines are different milestones that we're often seeing in these different domains, feeding oneself and dressing oneself, for example, in looking at what people can do for themselves. And so based on the skills shared with us so far, many individuals with Kleefstra syndrome are likely to be feeding themselves at age 4 and older, and as again, we're seeing variability where some people have more advanced skills and some people are developing those skills. And then in terms of social development, uh, things like making eye contact, choosing friends, we're seeing about 3/4 of Kleefstra individuals are likely to be making eye contact at age 4 and older. And again, with some people developing more social skills and others working towards that social skill development. And so to summarize preliminarily in our smaller sample size here, common issues we're seeing through our medical history form and our Vineland data include language delay and impairment, intellectual disability and developmental delay, autism, neurological issues, primarily low muscle tone, vision issues, GI issues coming through, particularly constipation and GERD, and then in fewer people, but still notable, we're seeing seizures, we're seeing joint hypermobility, scoliosis and chronic fatigue, reports of obesity, anxiety and ADHD, some heart concerns, and then the different skills development levels in the Vineland data that we shared. So I will say this, as I mentioned, this is preliminary. The more data we collect, the more we can summarize back. So it would be great, for example, to deeper dive into our communication data, our sleep data. That's been coming up a lot today. The regression information we collect, that's also been coming up a lot today. Quality of life and more. So as we get more of that survey data, we can help summarize that back. And so to close out, I'll just highlight why you might consider joining Simon Searchlight. There are so many research opportunities, and we know it's a lot. So we do have 15 years of operating in different iterations across genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. We're led by Dr. Wendy Chung, Dr. Cora Taylor, and the Simons Foundation Autism Research Initiative with their generous funding to our program. We are a multidimensional international research program that we really try to invest in patient organizations and the broader research community through our data registry, our community advisory committee, and our biobank. Sharing data back is important. We do try to do what we can to share back in easy to understand registry updates and reports like today. And really, we want you to represent yourself in research, but we also want to protect your privacy. So we de-identify all participant information before sharing with the research community and really follow the highest standards of data security. And so with that, I'd like to thank you all for listening to me in this last session today. Thank you to all of the families who are participating in Simon Searchlight for your time and commitment to all of these surveys. And this has been just such a wonderful day of talks. If families are interested, and thank you, I define, of course, Eric, Jeff, the whole team for having me. If families are interested, you can register at simonsearchlight.org. If there's any trouble, our go-to email is coordinator@simonsearchlight.org. And there's also the website and email address for any researchers who want to request data and biospecimens. We're on all the socials. Social media team is great. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Katina. And while you were speaking, we put the link to Simon Searchlight in the chat, so people can just click right in if they want to sign up right now. And the initial sign
Nice.
up is pretty easy, so you shouldn't be afraid of getting started. Um, and I think also just kind of a example of kind of where the rubber meets the road for our community, is I saw a researcher present some really interesting work on a few other NDDs, and I followed up with her and I said, have you ever looked at Kleefstra syndrome, and how did you decide what disorders you were going to look at for this study? And she said, oh, well, we went to Simon Searchlight and we found the ones that met our requirements and that had a lot of registrants, because we knew we could get what we needed from Simon's to do the work we wanted to do. And so that really is a great example of, you just kind of have to be, Simon's like this map. You need to be on the map, so researchers will find you, because you never know what they may be looking for. Maybe they're looking for all NDDs that are associated with scoliosis, like because they're trying to do some kind of study and they need that information. And so Simon's is this place where they can follow that map and they can find that kind of data. So I think it's a really good example case. I had a question about the this doing surveys. I think were you here for Anna's talk where she talked about using the CRID to cross-share survey data? Um,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
and and I just wanted to check in with you on that same question, because I think if we could get that synchronized so that people are taking surveys once and then they get cross-shared across resources by CRID,
Mhm.
that'd be a huge impact on people's time doing surveys.
Yes, so we have, and actually I can share this with you after the call, or I mean, if I'm able to, I might not be able to find it in time when when this closes out, but we do have how-to language on simonsearchlight.org. It lists out, I think it's like 3 steps or something on how to enter the
Yep.
CRID into the participant portal, and that's the easiest way. And in the data set that's available on Safari Base, in our most recent release, and then moving forward, we have a field that shares the CRID right next to our Safari ID. So it's easier now for sure to be able to link data by that CRID. So I can get you that information to share out,
Great.
if that'd be
Yeah,
helpful.
we'll be doing some outreach to the community and follow-ups. If you can get us that, that'd be
Okay.
fantastic, and
Yeah.
we'll leverage that in the follow-up. Yeah, because I think it's going to be a huge, that kind of functionality would really, I think, increase everyone's activity, because they know they need to fill it once, and then voila, it's going to show up in multiple places. So I think it could be a huge win for all the resources and for the patients. I had a question about you said that there's the connection portal where researchers can basically do like a research match. Can you say a little bit more about exactly that, how that works, and what would be the experience for people who are registered on Simon Searchlight if there's a researcher that's looking to connect?
Yes. So from the participant experience, what that would look like is you would receive an email to the email address that you have registered with Simon Searchlight, and it would have a high-level summary saying something like, there is an investigator that's running this study. This is like a short summary of what that is. Um, you may be eligible for this study. If you are interested, click into this link.
Okay.
And then that kind of ports you into the research match team infrastructure, where they can ask you maybe some screener questions to make sure you're actually eligible. And then there's essentially a handoff to that other lead investigator. The other path is which is slightly different. I think the participant experience is the same, but there's also this second path of maybe helping to build out surveys in the platform. But from the participant perspective, it's essentially the same. And
Mhm.
if you wanted me to talk about the researcher experience, I can do that as well, or share more afterwards, whatever you prefer.
So for the researcher, yeah, if you can just briefly say
Mhm.
how they do, what it looks like for them, like just so we know kind of if they're interested in conditions
Yeah,
that are XYZ, how do they
right.
find the right people and the right groups?
Right. So they the same information here, like the base.safari.org and the STBR at simonsfoundation.org, those teams like manage this program as well, or they manage the initial touch point for that program. Uh, Basically, the investigator would come to the research match team. There's an application process, so we would ask things like, who are you? Where do you work? What's your study? Who are you looking
Yeah.
to recruit? And then the research match team reviews it to make sure it's a qualified researcher who has the adequate
Yeah.
resources, because we want to be really responsible and careful about who we're connecting families to. And once they're approved, they're given access to essentially a portal where they can we will do the facilitation to contact the participants. And once we find a good match, they're kind of linked in the back end and can take it from there.
Yeah. Great. That's really
So
powerful.
there is an application process. It's not like a
Yeah.
guarantee, because we want to make sure we're being responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So while we were speaking, Jeff, who's really good at this, found the CRID help doc on Simon
Oh,
Searchlight and
good.
posted the
Okay.
link. So
Thank
it's
you.
already up, and also information on how to get a CRID and all of that. So and what a CRID is for those who don't know. So I think it's right there. So, but we will be doing some follow up with the community as well on all the things we've discussed at this conference. So um,
And I
great.
think just one other note on Simons, and I think overall, as we talk about the relationships that we've developed in the space, we've had conversations with Simons and Safari for years now, and I think there's an opportunity uh, with our existing relationships, and I think Kate was referencing it earlier with Citizen about really developing richer data sets, and I think just taking that vernacular and applying it to the relationships, and not instead of just going a mile wide and 2 inches deep, like how do we actually tap deeper into all the relationships that we have? And something that's really interesting from a Simon's perspective is the synergies with Wendy Chung, who you just mentioned. Dr. Chung is also the chair of pediatrics at BCH now. And so there's a really good synergistic relationship between Simons and BCH. And obviously, we have a great relationship there. And so I think just diving deeper into whatever we can as it relates to Simons and BCH, since there's again, some natural partnerships that exist, I think can only behoove us in developing a deeper, richer ecosystem.